Hey beautiful family, so I want to give you an update on the amazing Brave and at the same time tell you what this remarkable old fighter of a dog reminded me, taught me. I want to say taught, but perhaps I can say reminded because it was a lesson I once knew, but a lesson I needed to relearn. So Brave is back at Feather's Tail and he is good. And not only is he good, he's extremely loving and the children adore him. His fractured skull, which has a hole here, has been repaired as best it can with what's available. He's not in any pain and ultimately he's now on the road to full recovery despite the fact he has this head that was crushed. A car drove over this poor guy's head. Brave's head was driven over by a car, so the damage was quite profound, but the fact he has survived and that he is healing, it's just mind-blowing, and it's an Advent miracle. To me, Brave is an Advent miracle. Undoubtedly, a Christmas miracle if you prefer. But what I wanted to say is that I had not been on a rescue or an outreach, etc. for a very long time because I was bedridden. I was sick, as you all know, for a long period. And that does things to you. I am not the man that I was prior to getting ill. I'm different. I'm physically, emotionally, and mentally different. In some ways I'm better, in some ways I'm worse because I'm still recovering my body and the damage that was done. But what I hadn't realized is how disconnected I had gotten. And I have said before in videos that in caring for one another, you almost, for me, you leapfrog ahead of those partaking in certain spiritual practices to eradicate their sense of self. A lot of people will meditate for a very long time to get away from the sense of self and the egoic identity, basically making yourself the center of everything. And it happens on the spiritual journey too. People continue on the spiritual path and it's all me. It's all about myself and my growth and my development, and it's never about other. But I say this is wrong, and it's a trap that we go into. You must self-grow, of course. It's not wrong to focus on self sometimes. But what happened to me is something that I learned years ago in Tanzania. When I first started out in Tanzania, I remember very well rescuing a child. And as I was rescuing this child, and it was a rescue, they were tied up in the shed. They lived a miserable life. The hair was missing on the back of their head from where they rolled around with their cerebral palsy. They were rescued by us. But whilst all of this was happening, whilst this crazy time of seeing this level of suffering in front of me was occurring, it was later in the day where it fully dawned on me and I realized that for that whole day, I had not asked any questionings about self. I have not asked any questions about self. I stopped questioning as we do throughout the day. Often we have an internal dialect. Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? And in that moment of crisis where I was needed by somebody in a far worse position than anything I could think up inside my head, then it allowed me to let go of myself all day long. And as my life progressed in Tanzania, as I was rescuing dogs and children, the realization of observing that within myself, that whilst I was in a position where I had to look after others, where I was in a position where I was called by someone in a state of utter discomfort and suffering, that my sense of self would just dissipate and everything made sense. There was no question whatsoever. And while I was rescuing Brave, it came back to me and I'd missed it. Because while I was rescuing, there was no question about what the meaning was, what I should be doing. There was nothing there. No reason for any thought other than to be thinking about the present moment and this emergency in front of me. And many of us are blessed with life paths where that is part of us. Doctors, nurses, etc. We hope are in that state of mind. Not all are, of course, but we hope they are. And it's in that state of emergency you need present-mindedness. And somehow, whilst I was rescuing Brave, I revisited it. And I had no questions, whereas I'd had many. Throughout every day we have questions about, what are we doing the right thing? Should it be going that way? And right there and then, when this poor guy just needed help and love and a human being, despite the fact that there were thousands around him and nobody was doing a thing, he needed somebody who can be strong enough to stand in their heart and away from their thoughts, away from their carnality, and say, this is suffering that we do not need to see, and we can intervene and do something. And to do that, you must be a vessel. And to be a vessel, you must be where? In the now. And if you want to be a vessel for God, it's the same thing. You have to be able to serve God. You have to be able to live in the now. If you cannot live in that now, if you are worrying about tomorrow or regretting yesterday, you cannot be a tool that is functional at the level it needs to be to serve God. So when I was rescuing Brave, I got pulled back to there, and I was just happy to be revisiting it and be reminded of this lesson that I learned long, long ago. That truly we have a problem in humanity. Until every person is catered for, until suffering is not something that people are being born into, even as you hear my words now, then all of us should be able to be present until we deal with ending and eradicating the suffering that those children are being born into, from a position of the comfort that we have found through our technology and our intellect and our innovation. We should be able to stay present and share that with others. Let that come down to others from what our ancestors passed on to us. But if you're going to do it, you've got to be now. You've got to be here. You've got to be present. And somehow when you get into those situations where a dog or a child truly needs you, and you're the only thing in the world between their suffering and their peace, you'll see pretty quickly that you can outstill the most practiced Buddhist monk in a monastery who has spent 10, 20 years meditating in a monastery to be still, to get rid of sense of self. You can cut all of that by simply living in the highest form of religion to serve those who need us, who are able-bodied and have an ability to alleviate or eliminate the suffering of our brothers and sisters and children on this planet. Big love. Thank you, Brave, for reteaching me that, and thank you, God, that Brave is where he is now. God bless, guys. Bye.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain. We all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend, and I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. So please swallow your pride. If I have things you need to borrow, for no one can feel those of your needs that you won't let show. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lead.